In October 2015, an email went around saying, Richard Wexler said, I'm back, and the response that exploded as a result among grassroots family advocacy groups was, email after email going, best news all year. We can't tell you how ecstatic we are, and we missed you, and we're joining the Hallelujah chorus, and and it was really a showing of how much we needed the work of Richard and the National Coalition for Child Protection Reform, because it's like you sort of lost your what was giving you the tools that you needed to fight what you were doing, and we were all a bit adrift, and not only or because we were adrift, the removal rates started to go up again. This is not just something, we're happy to have Richard. In fact, the child removal rates had been dropping because of work like the National Coalition and the other groups have been doing. And in the 3 years it started to go back up again, especially in Philadelphia. Philadelphia has the distinction of removing children at the second highest rate in the country. It was number one. Now we're number two, just because somebody's even worse, not because we're any better. But so it's actually really critical that we're doing this work, because you see it in numbers and you see it in children's lives. And one of the things we were saying, Richard had to leave because of budget constraints with the organization, and the reason he came back was because he retired. And and so Uncle Sam was paying the bill. And my view is anybody who uses retirement to go back to work, is really a true campaigner. So Richard Wexler is a former journalist. He wrote a book about the child welfare system called Wounded Innocence. And he helped to found the National Coalition for Child Protection Reform. He lives in the Washington, D.C. area, and we used a quote of his on our publicity because we really felt it summed up for Women's History Month what we've been saying, and that is, it's difficult to take a swing at mothers without the blow landing on their children. Can we all welcome Richard Wexler?
Well, thank you very, very much. I like to say that NCCPR is now being funded by government grants. My Social Security checks. First, for this one part, I'm speaking solely for myself, not for NCCPR, but after what Selma said about, white-haired white guys, I do want to note something I mentioned on the way over here, which is that I actually bought one of those Bernie Sanders t-shirts that showed just the silhouette of the hair askew and the glasses, on the theory that we old Jewish guys who haven't mastered tools of modern technology like the comb need to stick together. Or other technology. Other point I would just make, Dorothy, following up on what Dorothy said, every time I think I can't be astounded by the terrible things that happen in child welfare, I am proven wrong. And one of the astounding things that has happened is in response to the debate about racism in child welfare, and there really shouldn't be a debate about that, in almost we know that racism permeates every aspect of American society. And if you gathered a meeting together of police chiefs, I suspect they would at least pay lip service to it. They would say, yeah, we have a problem with it, but, or we're doing something about it, or whatever. They might not mean it, but they'd at least say it. In child welfare, there is an entire group made up of many who claim they're liberals, who are totally, to use their favorite phrase, in denial, who insist that child welfare is magically exempt, immune from the racism that permeates every other aspect of life. Now, that is changing. Mostly it's changing because of Dorothy. And it's changing in a lot of ways because of Dorothy. When I started out, reporting on this issue as a journalist, there was this denial that poverty had anything to do with it. You would hear, well, you know, child abuse crosses class lines. And I'd say, well, how come I only see poor people in the system? Now, one of the great things Dorothy has done by putting this issue on the map is, you try to confront people about racial bias, they'll at least now say, oh, it's not racism, it's poverty. So at least we've got them to the point of copping to the class bias. So, I am truly honored to have the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm also truly honored that you chose as the title of this event, Welcome Back, Richard Wexler. However, I have this vision of people all over Philadelphia looking at the flyer for this event and thinking the same thing. Who in the world is Richard Wexler? So I thought I'd start by trying to answer that question and explaining how I got involved in these issues. And it's a story that goes back almost exactly 40 years. For much of my professional life, I was either a journalist or a professor of journalism. I covered my first child welfare story in 1976 while I was still a journalism student. And I interviewed a woman who was at the time 21 years old. By the time she was 9 years old, she had been in 9 different foster homes. She told me she had survived by keeping the rage bottled up inside, as she put it, unlike my 5 brothers who've been in every jail in New York State. And this is some of what she said. My bitterness is not that I went through what I did. My bitterness is that I don't think it should have had to happen. There was no reason my family's life should have been destroyed. The people that I've seen, the kids that have emerged from foster care, are dead. Their hearts are functioning, the old heart's pumping the blood around, but they're basically dead inside. It's been killed. Either they had to kill it to survive physically, or somebody else killed it in them. Whatever it is that makes people human. Now, after speaking to this woman for 2.5 hours, I reached some conclusions. First, I was very glad I chose journalism as a career. Second,